Good day, everybody. Today we'll discuss on salts. Before we understand what salts are, we have to understand what acids are, what alkalis are. Some examples of acids are sulfuric acid, H2SO4, hydrochloric acid, HCl, nitric acid, HNO4. So formula of acid should be known. H2SO4, it contains sulfate. Hydrochloric acid, HCl, it contains chloride. Nitric acid contains nitrate, NO3. Some examples of alkalis are sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide, calcium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide contains sodium and hydroxide. Potassium hydroxide contains potassium and hydroxide. Calcium hydroxide contains calcium and hydroxide. Acids react with alkalis. The reaction is known as neutralization. The reaction between an acid and alkali is known as neutralization. The reaction between sodium hydroxide and sulfuric acid is known as neutralization. So when an acid reacts with an alkali, products are formed. They are salts and water. To get salt, we need to react an acid with an alkali. So when an acid reacts with an alkali, a salt is formed. Some examples of salts are sodium sulfate, potassium sulfate, zinc sulfate, magnesium sulfate. If we have to obtain a salt, we need to have an acid and alkali. With sulfuric acid, we'll prepare sulfates. So these have been prepared from sulfuric acid. With nitric acid, we get nitrates. These are nitrates: sodium nitrate, potassium nitrate, zinc nitrate, and magnesium nitrate. With hydrochloric acid, we can prepare chlorides: sodium chloride, potassium chloride, zinc chloride, magnesium chloride. Examples of sulfate: sodium sulfate, Na2SO4, potassium sulfate, K2SO4, zinc sulfate, ZnSO4, magnesium sulfate, MgSO4. To get sulfates, we have to get sulfuric acid. From sulfuric acid, we can prepare sulfates. For example, if we have to prepare sodium sulfate, we need to get sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid will provide us the sulfate, and sodium hydroxide, the alkali, will provide us the sodium. They both react to give sodium sulfate, aqueous, and water. To prepare sodium chloride, NaCl, the Na will get from sodium hydroxide, the alkali. Chloride will get from hydrochloric acid, the acid. The sodium hydroxide will react with the hydrochloric acid, will give sodium chloride and water. This is the equation for the reaction between sodium hydroxide and hydrochloric acid, giving sodium chloride and water. The sodium chloride, the sodium sulfate can be obtained from the solution by a process known as crystallization, because the salts, sodium chloride, sodium sulfate, are soluble. They have to be obtained by crystallization. When we have to prepare insoluble salts, we have to get the insoluble salts by a process known as precipitation. So we should know which salts are soluble and which salts are insoluble. Some salts are soluble, some are insoluble. All sodium salts are soluble. So we prepare by crystallization. All potassium salts are soluble. They are prepared by crystallization. All nitrates are soluble. They are prepared by crystallization. All chlorides are soluble except silver chloride, lead chloride. So all chlorides can be prepared by crystallization except silver chloride, which is prepared by precipitation. Lead 2 chloride is prepared by precipitation. All sulfates are soluble except calcium sulfate, barium sulfate, lead sulfate, silver sulfate. These sulfates which are soluble are prepared by crystallization, and the insoluble sulfates are prepared by precipitation. Barium nitrate, sulfuric acid will give you barium sulfate and HNO3. Nitric acid, barium sulfate is a solid, is a precipitate. It can be obtained by filtration. We separate the barium sulfate and obtain it as a residue. So filtration is an important method of separating a mixture. A precipitation reaction is one in which when aqueous solutions react, a solid is formed. The solid is known as the precipitate. Barium sulfate is important. Barium sulfate is used to make paints, and this is obtained by reacting barium nitrate and sulfuric acid, obtain barium sulfate. This gives us an important use of sulfuric acid in the making of barium sulfate, in the making of paints. There are other methods of preparing salts. A salt can be prepared by reacting an oxide with an acid. Copper 2 oxide, a black solid, is made by reacting copper 2 oxide with nitric acid to obtain copper 2 nitrate and water. So to get copper 2 nitrate, CuNO3 twice, the nitrate will obtain from nitric acid, the copper will obtain from copper 2 oxide in this case. We can obtain a salt by reacting a carbonate with an acid. Sodium carbonate, sulfuric acid gives sodium sulfate, water and carbon dioxide. Sodium sulfate tells us which substance we have to take. We can take sodium carbonate in this case. Sulfate tells us we have to take sulfuric acid. So these two react with effervescence, with evolution of carbon dioxide, a gas which turns fine water milky, and formation of sodium sulfate. It is soluble, so it has to be obtained by crystallization. To obtain sodium chloride, we can make by neutralization. We react sodium hydroxide with hydrochloric acid, we obtain sodium chloride, water. This is neutralization, and the sodium chloride can be obtained either by crystallization or by evaporation to dryness. We can use evaporation to dryness because sodium chloride does not decompose on heating. So we have to be careful when we heat a substance. If it decomposes, we have to avoid heating. Salts are important. I'm going to prepare. This is manganese sulfate. I'm going to prepare manganese carbonate. So I have manganese in the tube, manganese sulfate, and I have sodium carbonate here. I add sodium carbonate, I obtain a white precipitate of manganese. Manganese from manganese sulfate, carbonate from sodium carbonate gives manganese carbonate. If I filter this, I obtain manganese carbonate as the residue. So I know how to obtain a salt known as manganese carbonate. You have to obtain barium. This is manganese sulfate. I want barium sulfate, so I am taking sulfate from manganese. To this, I add barium nitrate. Barium nitrate and the manganese sulfate will give barium sulfate. An immediate white precipitate of barium sulfate. I can remove the barium sulfate by filtration. I wash the residue. I obtain barium sulfate as a white solid. This barium sulfate is used in the making of paints. So barium from barium nitrate reacts with sulfate from manganese sulfate to form barium sulfate, a white solid, a white precipitate. These are aqueous solutions and give a white solid precipitate barium sulfate. Salts are important. There are many uses of salts. Barium sulfate is used in the making of paints. Sodium nitrate is used in fertilizer, NPK. Magnesium sulfate is used as a laxative. Calcium sulfate is used in the making of plaster of Paris. Thank you very much for your attention. See you another time for another lesson. Goodbye from me. Au revoir.